Today we're going to talk about the medieval Catholic Church and the religious climate that was in existence when Beowulf was transcribed. This is important to do to get an understanding of the whole epic as we have it today. Beowulf is an Anglo-Saxon epic poem that was composed between 700 and 750 AD by an unknown author. Originally, the poem was passed down through the oral tradition, being recited at mead halls and gatherings by Scops, like the one on the right. The word scop means tale singer, and these men were the Anglo-Saxon version of a bard or an entertainer. The Anglo-Saxons were pagans, following a religion similar to that followed by the Vikings, and the poem highlights these beliefs and values. It is important to remember that Beowulf was originally a pagan hero. Beowulf was first written down around the year 1000 AD. This was during the Middle Ages, when Christian monks, who were among the few literate people, were making records of history and literature. While the monk was transcribing the epic, he also made some changes to its content. Today this would be unheard of, but in the Middle Ages it was pretty common. The changes made to the epic largely brought it in line with Christian beliefs and sensibilities. The medieval Catholic Church was very different from the modern Catholic Church. During the Middle Ages, very few countries had centralized governments. Rather, Europe was made up of many smaller kingdoms. The vast majority of rulers and people living during the Middle Ages were Catholic, and therefore owed allegiance to the Pope. This meant that the Catholic Church was a central authority in a way that many governments were not. In order to help maintain this authority, the Vatican developed close ties between knights and the Church. The Church did this by attempting to regulate the training of Christian knights. It is important to note that the Church's control of knights was at its highest around 1000 AD, the same time that Beowulf was being transcribed by Christian monks. The Church had very specific reasons for wanting to control the knights. Knights were usually wealthy, and the Church hoped that if the knights were spiritual, they would leave lands and money to the Church in their wills, which would help the Church acquire wealth and power. In order to do this, the Church stressed faith in God, especially the Old Testament belief that God would physically aid those who would fight for him. The Peace of God, or Pax Dei movement, was led by the medieval Church to protect people who were designated as non-combatants from violence. This included women, priests, pilgrims, people who travel for religious reasons, and merchants. It was also designed to protect church lands from being attacked. The movement began in France in the late 10th century in response to the growing inability of the royal and regional secular authorities to maintain order, and was based on religious teachings that it is the sacred duty of those in authority to protect the weak of society. Warriors who were part of the movement pledged to fight anyone who violated the peace of God. So essentially, it's okay to fight those who started it, but you can't fight against those who can't fight back. You could pick on the bullies, not on the victims, is kind of the idea. Knights who robbed or attacked a church, stole farm animals from the poor, or robbed or attacked a clergyman could be excommunicated, which means that they would be kicked out of the church. Since people who have been excommunicated cannot receive the sacraments, this was also essentially preventing someone from entering heaven, which could not be done if someone had died without confessing his or her sins. The Peace of God directly led to another church initiative called the Truce of God, as well as the Crusades against the Muslims in the Holy Land. The Truce of God, or Trevia Dei, is an initiative by the Roman Catholic Church to suspend warfare during certain days of the week and certain times of the year. It was intended to prevent violence among Christians, especially the knights, because if Christians are killing other Christians, that leads to less Christians in the world. In total, the Church managed to limit days on which fighting was permitted to approximately 60 days of the calendar year, by forbidding fighting on Sunday, because it's the Lord's Day, Friday, because Jesus died on Friday, all holy days and saints' feast days, and all 40 days of Lent. So you're probably wondering, how did wars happen? I never said people followed this. This was just the official rules. Okay, the last thing we need to talk about is the relationship between Christians and non-Christians. What we're about to discuss seems pretty crazy today, given that the Catholic Church actively reaches out to people of other faiths, but that's only an incredibly recent development. The medieval church did not have a good relationship with non-Christians. It routinely persecuted and tried to convert Jewish people with things called the Inquisition, although this happened a little bit later, and waged multiple official wars with the Muslims, which today we call the Crusades. The First Crusade was launched in the year 1095 in order to rescue the Holy Land from what the Church called the infidel, but tensions had been building long before that. Practically speaking, the Church permitted and even encouraged the killing of non-Christians, and basically spread the message that good Christian knights should kill everyone who didn't follow the teachings of Christ. So basically the Church's message was, let's go kill the non-believer in the name of our loving Lord and Savior. It sounds pretty crazy, but that was the basic gist of the situation. Okay, so go over your notes and make sure that you have a good handle on all of this. If you don't, check out the video again, because you're going to need to understand these concepts in order for us to have our discussion next class. So enjoy the rest of your weekend or your night, and I will see you in class.